What's up, Dom? We're going to knock out your movement assessment here. So the first thing that I see is some pretty good looking columns. We've got that ankle, knee, hip, shoulder stacked nicely in vertical fashion. I do not see much shift, if any. If we are dealing with anything, I'd say that left hip is a little bit higher than the right one. And that left shoulder might be a little tiny bit higher than the right one as well. Does look like that right knee turns out a tiny bit more than we want. So we'll work on, finding and maintaining neutral with the pelvis. Next, we're looking for your chain of dominance. So we'll go back at the ankle right up to greater trochanter, kind of right about here. That big bone. All right, so we are looking pretty good here. Relatively back chain dominant. We're in the mid 80s, low 80s. Good stuff. Next thing we're going to want to start drilling is getting that upper body back. So I want to see that. I want to see that ear start to line up with this here, with this line. So we'll continue getting those hips back, but we're going to get that upper body more back chain dominant too. That's the goal here. Good, good, good. All right, squat looks pretty good. We know that we're dealing with some hammer toe, some bunion, so we're going to expect not to see a lot of control out of the big toe. But when we sit down into that squat, we do want to begin grabbing the ground a little bit more. I imagine over the last week or so, you've been working on those foot and ankle exercises, the toe exercises. Those should help you tremendously. We do need to get you further in the back chain as well, as far as like building strength and length through the hamstrings, glutes, low back goes, so that we can start to get those palms flat towards the floor. We want to get you able to really flatten that hand out on the ground. Squat looks okay. We want to be able to get that ass to grass and keep the heels down. So we've got a good shape here, but we've got a lot of length that we can unlock. And that's really going to make you fucking scary with a golf club. But the good news is we've got the general patterns. So you kind of know what you're doing a little bit. When we go into the hinge, though, I'll point out, and you'll see this in the little lecture video. You've probably seen it in your boys' lecture video as well. When we work a hinge, we actually want to start to close this shape here, and we have a corner position. So the knees rotate in, the hips close, the lumbar spine kind of anchors and stays neutral, long, decompressed. And we see that shin turn in, the knee turn in, the heel turn away. So we're going to start to work that into the hinge more often and differentiate whether we're landing or leaving.
All right, so I'm going to talk about a couple concepts. First one has to do with the bow and the squat and the way we need to create a bow through the use of two of our handful of gyroscopes that we look at. So the ankle is one gyroscope. The hip is another gyroscope. So when we begin to sit into a squat, the hip pulls back. We hinge a little bit. You see that bow start to open. So we have the shin and the thigh going back and away. We are opening everything here. In order to land safely and efficiently. So here's our bow. Here's our landing. Whether we're doing this on two legs or one leg, it doesn't matter. But this is how we want to see a landing look. It's important to keep a straight foot, and we're going to work on techniques to maintain that straight foot. The squat is the best place to start practicing it, but we're going to put that in motion little by little as we go. The next move we look at is the hinge. See how those heels are off the ground here? When we hinge, if the heel is not off the ground, we can do what's called a heel hook. So we slowly but surely get this portion of the leg stuck into the ground and as we hinge, we should see these kneecaps turn in towards each other. So that's the femur rotating in. But sometimes we're programmed to hinge in a way that rotates the kneecaps away. In either of those situations, if the heel is down, we're putting stress on the knee because we're creating shear force at that knee by allowing this to stay stuck and the femur to either rotate in, or if you're a reverse mover and you move poorly, the femur rotates away. As you'll see here, we want to synchronize these gyroscopes. So whether we're squatting, lunging, walking, running, if we're landing on the ground, we want everything to rotate away as you saw in the previous video. Or if we're hinging, leaving the ground, pushing off the ground, we want the hip to close and we want that ankle to close. So basically what we're trying to do is stop slapping the ground with our feet and instead start scooping the ground and pushing it away so that we see that heel turn away and that knee turn in. This should make a little more sense once you start seeing us moving as well. All right, so once we're moving, things start to get a little bit more complicated. It's not super complicated, but we do need to start looking at the body as two columns, because ultimately the spine is how we get around. We have to bend and twist that spine, but we use the shoulders and the hips to do so. So as we bend and twist that spine, we land with a straight foot, of course. That's not the focus of this portion of the video, but it's still very important. So we pull this hip back. The shin rotates away, the femur rotates away. We pull the shoulder back as well. And as we begin to push off, this opposite shoulder pulls. This same side shoulder whips around the front. This hip whips around the front. And we send energy away from the body. So the heel rotates away. The knee rotates in. Then we have to catch everything on the other side in the same fashion in order to load this side of the body. So we land with that shin open, that thigh open, that shoulder back, in order to get the head over the landing column of this side of the body. You'll see, like the previous portion I did, everything here on the left side of the body has kind of turned towards the midline. So we're closing that left side of the body in order to open the right side of the body, land, absorb, and then explode as we move to the other side of the body. We're constantly spiraling pressure from one side of the body to the other. We need that straight foot, we need that inside ankle high, we need the head over the landing column, and we need all three gyroscopes of the body synced up to manage force effectively. See it in the run too. It's just a little bit quicker. Load one side of the body, spin everything around. The knee flips in, the heel turns away. We're punching with that right shoulder around. And then we're opening the other side of the body to land efficiently in a bow. Elbow, hip, ankle are all open to accept that force. And then we send it all back in towards the midline so that we can open the other side. Hope you're starting to see and appreciate pressure and the side-to-side spiral dynamic that we really move with.
All right, so you have a pretty good idea of what's going on in the Stork. We want that toe in, we want that outside edge down. We're starting to open this column here because this would be our new supposed landing column if we were mid-stride in a run. So with this Stork position, we want to pull the elbow, shoulder back. We want to begin to bring the head over the new landing column here. And then we're bringing this shoulder, fist, hip, knee, shin, toe, all the way around the corner. And then this heel is kind of lifted, so you'll see it start to spin to the right. You'll see this heel spin away. That's your cornered column. So again, we've got a pretty good general idea of how the Stork needs to look, but we've got a few little fine details that we can start to work in so that this is something that's happening whether you're walking, lunging, running, swinging a club, anything you do, everywhere you go, we're going to see those hips behave properly. So on the walk, the hips are still moving in reverse. We've got that heel kind of flipping away a little bit. It's not bad, but we do have a reverse style movement on the push, on the leaving phase. See that heel flip in, that knee flip out. Landing looks good. You have a great understanding of what to do with the foot and ankle on landing. So that is great, because this is usually the hardest thing to sort out for someone. This is what takes the most time. But the more we crawl, the more we walk. If you end up getting one of those torque sleds, we are going to have you, the torque tank rather, we're going to have you dragging that thing around. You and the boys are just going to be dragging that sled around, hips back, strong inside ankle high, flipping that heel away every single step. It's going to be drilled into you guys' brains, and you'll not even know how to do anything different. All right, so on the run, the release starts to look better. This is, you're really kind of scooping the ground here instead of slapping it. The walk still has a little bit of a slap to it, at least on the corner, on the leaving phase. But as you leave the ground, like we're pretty much heel away here. The knee is neutral, the hip is kind of neutral. I'd like to see this thing really kind of coming around the corner, and we'd see a little more violent heel flip. But we're not in bad shape here, and it doesn't get bad in any way because you've got good landings. When the landings start to go, that's when we really see the leaving phase start to fall apart. So we're kind of Boda blend, middle of the road here, heel straight up, hip is a little stuck. The window to the hip is the knee, so if that knee turns in, then we know we've got some good movement out of that hip. But right now we do not, because that knee is kind of pointed straight forward. But at least we are not in terrible shape with a knee out, a hip stuck out, and a heel stuck in on the leaving phase. So on the go, you've got a good understanding of all this stuff. We're just going to have to keep playing with all of this movement at a less complicated pace, when we're walking and crawling and lunging and doing stuff like that. And we will start to bring up the speed. We will start to add resistance so that this starts to bleed into the way you move at a high level. But we're going to get you long, decompressed, more familiar with all of these transition phases, these leaving phases, because your landing phase isn't bad. But thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to getting going. Scorecard's coming up next, okay? All right, Dom, here's your scorecard. Everything looks pretty good, to be honest with you. We've got a couple things to work on, but infrastructure, this phase here, pre-movement. This is just standing. This is just sitting into squats, stuff like that. We are looking pretty good. We're inside ankle high. We've got good columns. There's maybe a little bit of a hip shift on that left side, so we'll be aware of that. But I think that's really going to clear up once we get you cornering well, and once we get a little bit more length added to your daily driver. Your back chain dominance is also pretty good in the pre-movement. I think it stays pretty well when you're moving as well, but we can continue building the suppleness in the back chain. The landing in the bow, it looks pretty good. We need a little bit of work. We're going to improve it for sure. The corner is kind of there, not really. We're going to, kind of put you middle of the road here. And the reset is pretty good. That's kind of the transition from one step to the next. So the more we are aware of what we're doing when we're sitting in a chair, or, if we're in the house and we can get on the ground, that kind of stuff is going to feed really nicely into all of the things that you need. So keep up the great work, continue learning, continue asking questions if you have any. I think some of our biggest goals right now are going to be working on those big toes, because those hammer toes are going to straighten out for sure. We're going to straighten them out, no surgery necessary. And we are also going to get you a lot more decompressed, because we are a little bit tight in the back chain right now. But when we get you loose, when we get you long, some amazing things are going to start happening in the way that you move and in your game overall. Pretty excited, bro. Let's do this.